So this is Katie Howerton. She is the designer for and creator for Our Jackson Home, which is ourjacksonhome.com. And she has printed magazines that come out, I always forget how often.
3 times a year. It's
Three times a year. And she develops and finds all the content and all the images, right, for all of them. So she does this magazine from scratch all the time.
Yeah.
So she's just gonna kind of go over. Can you kind of talk through like your process, like from beginning to end?
So this is our journal. Just for context, this is a 52-page journal. I know that Heather was saying that 30 pages was one of your assignments, so it's a good, helpful hint. But as far as my process goes, we are a volunteer-run nonprofit, so pretty much anytime we have a journal coming up, we also do this with our blog and podcast, I basically put out ideas to my team, and they reply with their availability, and that varies time to time. So that, like Heather was saying, I have to make these work out even if I don't have a ton of content. So writing is not my primary art, but I was able to write the cover story for this issue. So I was both thinking about the written content as well as the design, as well as the photography. So we do lots of different things, from things like this article. A lot of the photography was provided for me, and there was also some illustrative content. So just trying to figure out, based on the word count, particularly what layout worked best and what translated well. So something I love doing for this article, for example, was showing these sketches with the real life costumes, which was really cool. Then picking out stylistic things, again with this article, there were a few black and white photos, and I felt like it was better to just keep the entire article that way, stylistically. Pulling out colors for backgrounds out of that, thinking about, obviously layout's kind of a vague term, but text color, giving things negative space, whether you're going to put text over a photo or on another page, things like that. So yeah, I create this in InDesign. Also, I was going to show you this one. This article was about an old swimming pool here in Jackson, so it was cool because I had some content, some photography that was already created, and because it was vintage, I kind of gave it a vintage look. But because all the tones were different, I decided to do an overlay of color. They're just creative ways for you to make things look a little bit more intentional if you don't have the highest quality content on hand. So yeah, what are questions?
So as far as you have writers, right, that write a lot of content. Yes. Is it a lot of the same writers? Like, how do you...
Yeah, so we primarily communicate through a Facebook group is actually how we work. And there's a team of about 50 of us, I would say, that are just in the loop about Our Jackson Home. But I would say a dozen who are pretty consistent about creating content. And like I said, about half the time, that may be story ideas that I've come up with, or people have reached out to me that I'm pitching to a team that wouldn't necessarily have ideas on their own. And sometimes people reach out specifically and say, hey, I had this creative idea, can I run with it? And then you edit it up or whatever to make it presentable or whatever.
Do you have, because I've had students who've tried to do projects like this, and they have people that are like, oh yeah, I could do that, and then they never follow through, or you're like, okay, I need this right now. Do you have any suggestions on how to speed that up?
I think it's probably similar with teaching. If you really want something a certain date, give the due date like 2 weeks before that.
Okay.
That way, if they miss the date, there's some recovery time, and if they hit it, you've still got to do editing and stuff. So that's probably one of the biggest stressors of creating the journal, is that if people are, there are certain procrastinating types who are like, oh, I'm getting it to you, and I can't tell them the day that it's sent to print, because then they won't send it till that day. And there's a whole process of editing the writing, laying out the document, making sure the photography works, and then all the little things that you don't think about, like, okay, I gotta make sure there's page numbers on every page. and that the table of contents is correct. Things that are so dependent on each other. So yeah, I would say that anytime anybody is eager to help you, take advantage of that, but I would say cut in half what they say they can do for you and expect that realistically. Often you can read people's personalities and kind of learn if they're the type to aggressively help with something, or if they have great ideas, but you know, school's crazy and whatnot. So
time management,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. What about images? Do you take a lot of your own images?
Yeah, I would say I take a good chunk of them. I wish, so I have some training in photography, but it's not my primary art. So I think the only thing that I regret when I take the photos is that I only have one lens. I don't really like prepare a ton.
Yeah.
While if I was working with somebody who was, you know, a photographer by trade, they would think about lighting, they would think about where we do the shoot, they would bring multiple lenses, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I do the best with what I can. I think that when you're thinking about layout, like obviously cover is a spot that photography happens. A lot of it's things like negative space, and if you have full page images, you're gonna want them vertical, things like that. So that when you're in a shoot, you can think practically about like, where would this photo exist? Would I be proud of that? Would it look cool in print? Do I need to do something to the photo to make it interesting? So yeah, I think too, the editing process is what I'm more familiar with. For example, so we did an article on greens in Jackson, and my writer is not a photographer, so he took pretty crappy images of all the greens, but I cut them all out in Photoshop, and that gave it kind of like a cut and paste sort of feel, to where it was forgiving that they were not great photos. It comes across more like, okay, here's my little notebook of what I tried, because that's all the time we had for the thing. So I think post-production is kind of the biggest time. You can find ways to recover photos because sometimes you might be an amazing photographer, but somebody's workspace is not very interesting. So making the most of that, and then making the design make up for any lack of pizzazz in the photography. So
Cool.
yeah.
Will you talk a little bit about your, like, a day in the life of Katie Howerton?
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
people need to know that Katie she has a family, and how all that works.
Yeah. So I had a daughter about a year ago now, and so I started working part-time after that, just with the balance of, you know, energy and paying for childcare and all that sort of stuff. So while I used to be here all the time, all day, I'm here only 3 times a week now, which, even though that can be stressful sometimes, because things feel a little bit more rushed, for me, it helps me to focus on those days. I think sometimes my mom always says you get better work out of your part-time workers, because if you're at a job all the time, sometimes you can lose some steam or like not really know what to focus on. So thankfully, when I come into the office, I know what's most important. A lot of my responsibilities, the things I enjoy a lot, are the design and even editing I've come to really like. But then there's always some tasky things that are not so great, some more administrative stuff, just being the contact person, going through emails, and then event planning, which I'm not great at. So it kind of varies day to day. I try the best to like lay out a calendar of what's coming up, and try to rank priorities, because that's really hard for me. Sometimes I'm like, I want to work on the thing that doesn't matter at all, because that's more fun. So yeah, it's taken, I mean, I've been in this job now for 4 years, so it's been interesting to kind of learn what my habits are, bad habits, and things that get put off a lot. But for the most part, I try my best, especially now that I'm part-time, to have a weekly routine, that every Monday I update the website, every Friday I send out the newsletter, and those are not hard, cold structures, but there's somewhere for me to kind of start from, so that when I get into work, I'm just not overwhelmed by, oh, I could do anything, there's so much to do. And my job's very self-directed. Basically my own boss, which is great, but I'm a structured person, so sometimes that can be tricky. So I think that whether you work for yourself or work for somebody else, you still have to create a schedule that has some accountability for your own sanity. So yeah, that's, and I think too, it's unique. I don't always love it, but we live in a culture now where we can basically do our job from anywhere, which is really cool, but that's also not awesome in the sense that it's hard for me to put down work at the end of the day. But I try as best as I can to only let myself really focus while I'm here so that I get my best work and then I can go home and not think about it. So yeah.
Good. So I have a hard question for you, and I can edit this out if you're
Okay.
like, I don't know. So I mean, the students that are watching this video, they're for the most part Christians. It's a Christian school, and one thing that we try to focus on is integrating faith into our vocation.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments or stories or advice or like anything that has to do with how your faith informs what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think I'm grateful to be in an industry, I guess, or a business where my heart for the kingdom is like actually manifested through what I do. I think it's a different ballgame when you just have a job that you clock in and clock out, and really what you're just trying to do is like honor the Lord through that. I think that for me, I think the way that faith plays into the mission of our Jackson Home, which is to celebrate the people and stories of the city, is by giving a reason for why that's important. I get a lot of questions all the time from people about like, why do you do this? Or, why does this matter? Or why do you care that much? And, I can always explain that in a broad sense, but essentially I want to give dignity to the people here, which is the heart of Jesus, And so I think it's been really cool to feel that is being done through my work. And I think that also just in a collaborative workspace, kind of learning to love people, honestly. When I was in school, I was just surviving all the time, and I was also at a Christian school, so I was surrounded by that community, that it wasn't really even a thought all the time about letting people be loved and served, because they may not be in their lives. And now, after a few years of being in a community that's so diverse and so full of a lot of hard workers, trying to at least be the love of Jesus. I know something that I've been thinking about a lot. One of my friends just posted about this book called To Hell with the Hustle, and I really want to read it because I think that there's a mindset, particularly right now in our culture, that hustle is like the way to go. And I do agree that hard work is awesome and great, but a lot of the time through my work ethic is how I hope to preach the gospel, both in the sense that I work really hard, but also that this is not my life. So I get made fun of here sometimes for being the first person to leave at the end of the day, like 5 o'clock, I'm gone. But
I want to read that book too.
Yes, I know. So sometimes I do have to endure some crap. It's just, I think it's a tricky balance, because I think that work ethic is something that can set you apart, but it's just as important to show to people that your life matters beyond your work. And so that's an active challenge that I have to do is go against the wave of like, we're here till 10 o'clock at night, and just let it go and try to be a person and be a worker at the same time.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
I love that. I love hearing that from someone who naturally works hard.
Good.
Like,
It's been hard.
Yeah, I bet.
I always blame it in a good way on dating my husband my senior year of college, because like college was just, I did not take care of myself at all, didn't take care of other people, and once I started dating him, I like had this other thing to think about. And if I hadn't ever done that, that was the first year I got sleep, that was the first year I ever did anything other than school, and it just like helped me transition into adulthood without feeling completely like, what's the point of my life, and I have to go. Because a lot of us aren't blessed enough to get those like great, exciting jobs right out of the gate. So I can imagine it would have been even harder if I was just working a job that was transitional. And going from school where everything matters and everything's huge to that is really tricky. So just trying to learn how to be a person, learning that was like just as valuable as learning how to be an artist or whatever. So
Yeah.
anyway. I
That's
hope
a
that
great-
makes sense.
That's a great answer.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. That's so good to hear. Well, cool. Thanks, Katie.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing about what you do
totally.
and all your thoughts.
All my great thoughts.
All right. Well, you guys check out. I feel like I should say this at the end, like I'm on YouTube or something. I guess this will be on
Subscribe.
YouTube. Subscribe to Katie. Go to rjacksonhome.com.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll give you guys some inspiration.
Yeah. Thanks, Katie.
Yeah.